scary Peppa Pig episode that never made it on TV. Peppa and George were playing in their bedroom when they discovered something strange behind the yellow wardrobe. There was a small door they had never seen before, painted the same color as the wall. When Peppa pushed it open, cold air rushed out, carrying the scent of old toys and forgotten dreams. Behind the door was a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. George was scared, but Peppa was curious. She took her brother's hand and they descended the stairs together. The walls were covered with drawings that looked like theirs, but something was wrong with them. The stick figures had too many eyes, and the sons had faces that seemed to watch them as they passed. At the bottom of the stairs, they found another bedroom that looked exactly like theirs, but everything was backwards. The bed was on the wrong side, the wardrobe was blue instead of yellow, and sitting on the bed was another Peppa. This Peppa looked exactly the same, but her smile was too wide, stretching from ear to ear, and her eyes never blinked. The mirror Peppa stood up and spoke in a voice that sounded like an echo. She said she had been waiting for them for so long, living in the backwards room beneath their house. She explained that every child has a mirror version living in the space between walls, and she was Peppa's reflection that had learned to think for herself. Mirror Peppa showed them around the backwards room. Everything was familiar, yet wrong. The toys moved by themselves, the teddy bear's eyes followed them, and the pictures on the wall changed when they weren't looking directly at them. George started crying, but his tears fell upwards instead of down. The mirror Peppa said she was lonely and wanted to switch places. She could come upstairs and live with Mummy and Daddy Pig, while the real Peppa could stay in the backwards room forever. She promised it would be fun. That time moved differently here, and they could play games that never ended. Peppa realized this was wrong and grabbed George's hand. They ran towards the stairs, but Mirror Peppa followed them, her too wide smile never changing. As they climbed, the stairs seemed to stretch longer and longer, and they could hear Mirror Peppa's laughter echoing behind them, getting closer and closer. When they finally reached the top, Peppa slammed the small door shut and pushed the wardrobe in front of it. But even through the wood, they could hear scratching sounds and Mirror Peppa's voice calling their names. The scratching continued all night, and sometimes, when Peppa looked in mirrors around the house, she could see her reflection smiling that too wide smile, waving at her from the other side of the glass. From that day on, Peppa never played behind the wardrobe again, and she always felt like someone was watching her from the corners of mirrors. George stopped talking about the backwards room, but sometimes at night, he would point at the wardrobe and whisper about the girl who looked like Peppa, but wasn't really her. The scratching sounds never completely stopped, and every now and then, when the house was very quiet, they could hear Mirror Peppa calling from behind the wall, asking when they would come back to play in the room where everything was backwards and nothing was quite right. Scary Peppa Pig episode that never made it on TV. Peppa found a strange music box in her bedroom that wasn't there before. The music box was painted in bright Peppa Pig colors, but something felt wrong about it. When she opened it, a tiny dancer began spinning inside, and it looked exactly like Peppa, but with joints that bent in impossible ways and a smile that was painted too wide. The music box played a haunting lullaby that seemed familiar, yet twisted. The tiny dancer inside had glassy eyes that never blinked and moved in jerky, unnatural motions. As the music played, the dancer sang in a voice that sounded like Peppa's own. "Dance with me, play with me, never let me go." Peppa tried to close the music box, but it wouldn't shut. The music grew louder, and the tiny dancer began to grow bigger with each spin. Soon, the dancer was the same size as Peppa, standing right in her bedroom, still moving with those strange mechanical movements. The music box. Peppa had the same pink skin and red dress, but her smile was painted on and never changed. Her eyes were made of glass and reflected the light in an eerie way. She spoke in that same sing-song voice. I've been waiting so long for a friend to dance with me forever." Mummy Pig called from downstairs, but when Peppa tried to answer, the music box. Peppa mimicked her voice perfectly. Soon, Mummy Pig was talking to the wrong Peppa, unable to tell the difference.